a little volume slider and a bar. When you talk, that bar will flex, and it shows how loud it is. So you can adjust your volume so it doesn't give you feedback and echo and stuff like that. And then you hit the record button, another window pops up and says to stop the recording, to click this button right there, and to uh, hold, uh, or start, screen recording. But anyways, so I can show you a new movie recording. We'll click that, how loud the mic input is. And anyways, this button right here, on the screen recording, it's in a different location. The screen recording, it's basically just this box. That's it. Not this whole window. But if you click the down arrow, you can choose your camera. If you have a plug-in USB camera, you can switch to that. Here you have your line in, so if you have a pluggable microphone, you can use it, or the internal, like I have checked on mine. And then you can change the quality of your video to max, medium, or low, and choose where to save it. So to start a video recording, you just hit the record button, and now it's recording. And you can see right here the megabytes just ticking away as it records, and it shows you the time here. The only thing the screen recording doesn't show is the current amount of time, and it's a pain in the butt. So that's the only thing I've found using this as a downside. So we'll go ahead and stop that, and when you hit stop, with the screencast and the video cast, as you just saw, it popped up the movie I just made. And now it's recording it. And anyways, but
At the United Nations Emergency Relief Coordinator Valerie Amos appealed to Assad for greater access to besieged areas.
If I were able to speak to him right now, I would say put the people of Syria first. I mean, that has been my message from day one. And if you put the people of Syria first, then I think the rest falls from that, in terms of our ability to make sure that people are properly fed, that they have enough water, that they have proper sanitation, that they have health care, that they're able to educate their children, and crucially, that they have peace, security, and stability.
The UN, meanwhile, has confirmed Assad will fail to meet a deadline later this month for the removal and destruction of his regime's entire chemical stockpile. But Sigrid Kaag, head of the joint mission overseeing the stockpile's removal, said major progress has been made.
The deadline will not be met. What is important, however, that all the materials are out of harm's way and that destruction can start as soon as possible aboard the US ship, as considerable time has elapsed and considerable cost and time and investments have been made to get the job done. Equally so, I'd like to underline that significant progress has been attained over an impossible period of time, 9 months.
In other news from Syria, over 150 Kurdish students are being held captive following their kidnapping by rebels in a northern province last week. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria is said to be holding the students at a prison in the town of Manbij. It's one of the worst mass kidnappings in Syria's 3-year civil war. Thousands of protesters have marched in the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo in protest of public spending on the upcoming World Cup. The homeless workers movement led Wednesday's march to Sao Paulo's main stadium ahead of the World Cup's opening a week from today.
Today we want to get the attention of the government, marching to the stadium saying that we want to negotiate and open a channel dialogue with the government to negotiate our demands. If they do not attend to our needs, we already know the way to the stadium, and on the 12th We will be there again.
A federal appeals court has overturned a lower court's rejection of a proposed $285 million settlement between Citigroup and the Securities and Exchange Commission over Citigroup's sale of toxic mortgage debt. In a major decision 3 years ago, District Court Judge Jed Rakoff said the proposed settlement was neither reasonable, nor fair, nor adequate, nor in the public interest, and pocket change to any entity as large as Citigroup. The SEC had accused Citigroup of selling $1 billion of deceptive mortgage-backed securities in 2007, just as the nation's housing bubble was about to burst. Citigroup made $160 million in profits on the transaction, while investors lost $700 million. Rakoff's decision stood to have a major impact on how the SEC settles cases with major banks. But on Wednesday, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said Rakoff abused his discretion by applying an incorrect legal standard. The overturning of Rakoff's decision means the settlement will likely be approved. The oil giant BP is facing new fines for its 2010 Gulf oil spill following a new court ruling. On Wednesday, the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a 2012 decision that BP and the company Anadarko Petroleum should be fined under the Clean Water Act. BP and Anadarko had large stakes in the well that blew out and caused the worst offshore oil spill in U.S. history. The ruling could lead to billions more dollars in fines. Walmart is facing new worker strikes this week in 20 cities nationwide. Employees have walked off the job since last Friday, calling for higher wages and protesting alleged worker retaliation. The actions are being held in the lead-up to the company's annual shareholders meeting Friday. A new report from the group Walmart 1% says Walmart's 4 surviving heirs have given less than 0.1% of their $140 billion fortune to their family's own charity. The relatives of 3 Americans killed in U.S. drone strikes in Yemen without trial say they won't appeal the dismissal of their lawsuit against Obama administration officials. The families of Muslim cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, his teenage son Abdurrahman, and of Samir Khan had filed the suit accusing top U.S. officials of unlawful killings of U.S. citizens. But in April, a federal judge ruled the victims' constitutional rights were never violated and said the U.S. officials involved cannot be held liable. In a statement, the Center for Constitutional Rights and the ACLU said, quote, "The U.S. government killed 3 Americans without due process. Getting answers in court should not be too much to ask in a democracy, but our system of checks and balances failed these families," they said. A federal judge has given class action status to a lawsuit challenging solitary confinement at California's Pelican Bay State Prison. The plaintiffs say over a decade in solitary has subjected them to cruel and unusual punishment and violated their right to due process. Thousands of prisoners took part in a statewide hunger strike against long-term solitary confinement last year. The class action lawsuit could cover hundreds of prisoners. And activists and tech companies are holding a day of action today to promote greater online privacy. The Reset the Net campaign from the group Fight for the Future calls for increased web encryption and privacy tools for users. Today marks the first anniversary of the publication of the first Guardian story based on the leaks of NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. The backlash continues to grow over the prisoner swap involving U.S. soldier Sergeant Bo Bergdahl and 5 members of the Taliban. In Bergdahl's hometown of Haley, Idaho, community members have canceled a celebration of his release over public safety concerns. In recent days, angry phone calls and emails poured into Haley City Hall and local organizations over the town's support for the soldier. Bergdahl was captured by the Taliban in 2009, shortly after he left his military outpost in Afghanistan. He was held by the Taliban for 5 years. Some of Bergdahl's fellow soldiers have now described him as a deserter. They've also claimed that at least 6 soldiers died while searching for him. On Wednesday, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel rejected that claim.
On Sergeant Bergdahl, I do not know of specific circumstances or details of U.S. soldiers dying as a result of efforts to find and rescue Sergeant Bergdahl. I am not aware of those specific details or any facts regarding that issue.
On Capitol Hill, 4 top intelligence and military officials held an unusual closed-door briefing for the entire Senate on Wednesday to discuss why the White House decided to move ahead with the prisoner swap without notifying Congress. Senators were shown a recent video of Bo Bergdahl depicting him in declining health. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina warned that Republican lawmakers would call for Obama's impeachment if he released any more prisoners from Guantanamo Bay without congressional approval.
In another development, the Wall Street Journal reports that during the prisoner exchange negotiations, the Taliban warned that U.S. drone strikes had come close on several occasions to killing Sergeant Bergdahl while he was in captivity. To talk more about the story, we first go to Idaho, where we're joined by Larry Schoen. He's the county commissioner for Blaine County, Idaho. Haley is one of the 5 cities in Blaine County. Welcome to Democracy Now! Can you talk about first, Larry, the decision to cancel the celebrations upon the return of Bo Bergdahl, though we don't know when that will be?
Well, firstly, good morning, and thank you for having me. And I speak very mindful of all those who have given so much in service of the best intentions of the mission in Afghanistan. I was not in on the decision-making to cancel the event, but I think there were concerns about that the event would become too large for local officials to manage. I think some people have felt the temperature rising here as disagreements about what may have happened have come to the fore on the national stage. And really, I think nobody here wants to channel some of the nastiness that is out there. People are rushing to judgment, and I think that's inappropriate. And I think in light of circumstances today, the decision was made to cancel the event several weeks ahead of it to tamp that down.
And Larry Schoen, can you tell us something about your corner of the country where Bo Bergdahl grew up?
Well, this is a beautiful part of the country. Idaho is a state that's more diverse than any state in 48. People come here to recreate and be as part of the great outdoors. Our community is small. It's about 22,000, but made up of people who've come to live here and visit here from all over the world. It's the home to the Sun Valley Resort, which was America's first ski resort that founded back in the 1930s. And so it's a very close-knit community, well-educated community. People support one another in tough times, and I think that was the nature of this event, is to show support for the Bergdahl family and Sergeant Bergdahl, who's been held by the Taliban for 5 years.
Larry Schoen, yours is an unusual community, and you've got the great wealth of the celebrities like Bruce Willis and Demi Moore. Their home there, though they're divorced, but what they have there. And then you've got working class people. You've got, for example, the Bergdahls who moved from California. Calvinists homeschooled their kids, both Bo and his older sister Sky. He worked at the Zanies Coffee Shop. Can you tell us a little about that as a community center, and actually was well known for his ballet performances, Bo Bergdahl was?
Right. Well, people focus on the celebrity aspects of this community because people have been coming here from Southern California since the 30s. In fact, that was part of the marketing of this resort when it first opened. But this is a working class community, and Zanies is a coffee shop owned by an old friend of mine who opened it because that's what she loves, being with people. She loves serving people. It's a place where Bo worked and therefore has become kind of the Mecca in town. Our county is bigger than the state of Delaware with only 22,000 people. That people tend to congregate in the towns, but the Bergdahls, like I, live out in the rural parts of the county. And that has been a gathering place, and I think that's appropriate. I think people have tried to show the support over the course of these 5 years. It needed a place to do that, and Zanies was a good place. Above the job that he held there was one of the many things that this young man has done in his short life.
And how has the uproar in Washington and across the media now nationwide over whether Bo Bergdahl was a deserter and should have been rescued? How's that affected the town and its support for the family?
Well, I think it is. I think it's shaking the town because I think first and foremost, and certainly I, as an elected official here, think about the family and their son, our native son, and what they need to get through this ordeal. The whole 5 years of captivity, and now this ordeal in the national press, the global press. And so we're thinking first about them. And this is, from our perspective, this is not first and foremost about national and military policy and U.S. foreign policy, but certainly the issues surrounding his release. This is a very complex story, and there are ties to U.S. foreign policy coming out of this, really hometown story about this young man. And so I think people are shaken by that. I think people are trying not to rush to judgments here locally. I think everybody knows what is right and what is wrong in many of the different actions that have occurred. So we have many different components to the story. There is the question of what was his state of mind when he left his base and went missing. Was it appropriate for the U.S. government to release these 5 the Taliban under these circumstances? And there are many different parts to that story. So we're feeling the effects of the global story, but trying to focus, I think, on the health and welfare of the Bergdahl family.
And Larry Schoen, Bo's parents, Bob and Janie Bergdahl. Can you tell us a little about them?
They are wonderful people. It's a loving family. They are loving people. I'm sure they instilled in their sons the best values that America has to offer. And I support them 100% through all of this.
Bob Bergdahl worked at UPS for close to 3 decades.
Yeah, I don't really know how long he worked for UPS, but he's well known in town. He's been criticized for having spoken local, Afghanistan language, the Pashtun, and now he's being criticized for a number of different things because people are just searching for things to criticize in this event. But really, Bob is a very thoughtful man. I think he expressed publicly many times that his goals and intentions were to stand in solidarity with his son and to try as best as he could and as best as they could to appreciate and understand his circumstances and the circumstances of his comrades in Afghanistan. And I think the Bergdahls have acted with only the best intentions towards their son and this country.
Larry Schoen, thank you for being with us. County Commissioner for Blaine County, Idaho. Haley is one of the 5 cities in Blaine County. The Bergdahls live just outside of Haley, and Bo grew up just outside Haley and worked at this well-known watering hole, Zanies Coffee Shop, which is why he was very well-known in the community. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, we're going to speak to a soldier who served years in the military. He was in Afghanistan at the same time as Bo Bergdahl. And when he came back to the United States, he applied for conscientious objector status. Stay with us.
build all of them. You that build that plane. You that build all behind the wall. You that hide behind them. Just want you to know that I see through your mask. You have never done nothing but to build to destroy.
Odetta singing Masters of War. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. You know, Juan, as this controversy brews, it's on so many different levels. You've got the controversial prisoner swap and the whole issue of is this leading to the closing of Guantanamo. And then you've got Bo Bergdahl leaving the base. Not really fully understood at this point because we haven't talked to Bo Bergdahl. And once he left the base, he was not spoken to again except through Taliban videos of him. The question is being raised, did he desert? The question is being raised, that he's condemned in the mainstream media for his anti-war views.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk more about the Bo Bergdahl story. We go now to Brock McIntosh in Washington, D.C. He fought with the Army National Guard in Afghanistan from November 2008 to August 2009 and was based near where Bergdahl was captured. McIntosh later applied for conscientious objector status and joined Iraq Veterans Against the War. Brock McIntosh, welcome back to Democracy Now!
Thanks for having me.
Well, your initial reaction to the uproar in Congress and around the country over the prisoner swap with Bo Bergdahl.
Well, you just played a song called Masters of War, and there's a lyric in there where it talks about you that hide behind walls, you that hide behind desks, I just want you to know I can see through your masks. And I think that that's a perfect description of what we're seeing in Congress right now. These people who hide behind walls and hide behind desks, and are using a POW as a chess piece to win political matches, and that last week used a wounded veteran with nearly 40 years of military service, General Shinseki, as a political chess piece. And so I think it's outrageous. We know nothing about the actual circumstances of why exactly Sergeant Bergdahl left. We don't know what his intentions were. It's all speculation at this point. All we know for sure is that he was a POW, and he should have been welcomed home.
And Brock, tell us where you were in Afghanistan in relation to where Bo Bergdahl was. You served at the same time, though you didn't know each other.
Sure, Amy. I served in Paktika province initially for 6 months. That's where Bo Bergdahl went missing. Spent the last 3 months in Khost province. Those last 3 months were when Bo Bergdahl went missing. He went missing in June 30th, and I left Afghanistan in August 2009.
And in terms of this the allegations that in the search for Bergdahl, all of these soldiers, several American soldiers were lost, killed, and only the New York Times among the commercial media have really raised the issue that many of these soldiers are being brought out by a Republican political operative and made available to the various media. What you understand about these other soldiers who were killed around the same time while Bergdahl was in captivity?
Right. So, I think the story that's being told in the media makes it seem as though there was a unit that was briefed about some rescue mission, and they went out on this rescue mission to locate and extract Sergeant Bergdahl, and 6 people died in the process. That's really not the case. Bergdahl went missing on June 30th. Those 6 soldiers that died 2 months later in 2 separate missions, and it's not clear to what extent those missions had anything to do with searching for Bergdahl. They certainly weren't rescue missions. I mean, one of those deaths involved an American soldier being killed supporting an Afghan National Security Force mission. That's not a rescue mission. And we don't know why exactly these 6 soldiers died. There's all sorts of things that could explain it. Let's not forget that summer season is fighting season in Afghanistan. It could have been that they died in late August and early September because it was late in the summer. It was right before the winter, and attacks always ramp up at that time of the year. It could also be explained by the fact that in 2009, the Obama administration initiated this protracted counterinsurgency campaign and a surge in Afghanistan. So there's all sorts of different things that could explain why these soldiers died, and I think it's unfair to assert that Bergdahl went missing and therefore these soldiers died. And another thing also, in Bergdahl's unit, they had gone a few months without any fatalities. The first fatality was 5 days before Bergdahl went missing, so it couldn't have just been that he happened to have gone missing at a time when there were increased attacks and people were being killed. What's unfortunate is that he is being used again as a political chess piece in a political game, and conservatives are using the allegations of soldiers in his unit to imply that this man wasn't a hero, and therefore President Obama is not a hero for bringing this soldier home.
I'm looking at BuzzFeed describing Luan, which just talking about this former Bush administration official hired then resigned Mitt Romney foreign policy spokesperson played a key role in publicizing critics of Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. The involvement of Richard Grinnell, who once served as a key aide to Bush, U.S. ambassador to the UN, John Bolton, later worked on Romney's campaign. I wanted to go back, though, to 2009, to the soldiers who Bo Bergdahl worked with in that tiny outpost that they built in Afghanistan. We had Sean Smith on a few days ago, a Guardian videographer and photographer, who produced a film back in 2009, as well as one when he went to Idaho and met Bo's father, Bob Bergdahl, which we also played, and I encourage people to go to democracy.org to see all of that. Sean Smith spent a month embedded with Bo Bergdahl's unit in Afghanistan. In this clip, we hear from some of the soldiers stationed with Bo.
These people just want to be left alone. Yeah, they got dicked with from the Russians for 17 years. And now we're here. Yeah. Just feelings want to be left alone. The crops, weddings, stuff like that. That's it, man. I'm glad they leave them alone.
A few weeks later, Bo Bergdahl, pictured in this photo, disappeared. The circumstances are unclear.
That's from the 2009 video for The Guardian, produced by Sean Smith. Michael Hastings would further write about that, the late reporter for Rolling Stone. Rock, can you talk about your feelings when you were in Afghanistan, what was happening there? We've seen the emails that Michael Hastings wrote about in Rolling Stone of Bo to his parents, talking about his disillusionment with the war. What were your thoughts and the thoughts of other soldiers? Sean Smith, the reporter for The Guardian, said it was not unusual, more so among Americans than British soldiers in Afghanistan, to be highly critical of what was happening.
It's really hard. It was really hard to hear that clip, Amy, because it reminded me so much of the conversations that I had while I was in Afghanistan. There was so much talk about within my unit about these Afghan people and how they just want to be left alone. And we were all aware of the role that the U.S. played during the Cold War, using the Afghan people as a proxy to get back at the Soviet Union, using the lives of Afghans as political chess pieces and gamesmanship. And so to then be in Afghanistan to help people to help the Afghan people felt very disingenuous, and we never had any clear sense exactly why we were there, what it was that we're supposed to be doing, why these people are shooting at us, who is shooting at us, who are we shooting at, why are we shooting at them. And it really eats away at you, and it becomes a situation where all you want to do is you just want to come home, and you want your buddies on your left and your right to come home. And it's, what are you supposed to do in a situation where you find yourself you find yourself in a conflict that you don't agree with, where people are dying on both sides. At what what are you supposed to do? What recourse do you have? I didn't know that the conscientious objector process existed. That's one recourse you could take, but I didn't know that existed. There's an overwhelming lack of awareness that there's a formal process where when you have a conscientious shift, you can actually leave the military. But
and even your commanders at times are not aware of these options. Could you talk about that, confronting your own commander about, or your sense that you wanted to go into conscientious objector status?
Right. When I initially applied, it threw my commander off guard. I actually applied on the very first day in my new unit, and so my commander was thrown off guard, both because it was my first day meeting him, and also because he didn't think that process was possible. You can't just leave because you morally disagree with war, but it turns out you can. And to his credit, he read about the regulations, and he actually drafted a document that we signed together saying I didn't have to study use for bear arms.
Now, what did that mean? Where were you, Brock?
Well, I had applied actually about a year or so after I had come home, and I transferred from an Illinois National Guard unit to a DC State unit, and that's when I applied.
And what was that process you went through? You started serving in, November 2008. You were in Afghanistan to August 2009.
I started serving in November, August 2008, and like so many soldiers, I wanted nothing more but to just make this war work and to help the Afghan people. And again, it became increasingly frustrated when you didn't know why you were there, and you didn't know why these people were shooting at you, or who you were supposed to be, or why you were shooting, who you were shooting. And I wanted to make the war work, and so in that process of trying to make the war work, I started reading about the history and culture of Afghanistan, just like Bo's father did. And like Bo, it became really discomforting to learn about the relationship that the U.S. has had with that country for the past 30 years, and all the problems that it's created for the past 30 years. And, there were certain first-hand experiences I had that were unnerving, like seeing a 16-year-old bomb maker get blown up, and he came to our base to be treated, and we took turns babysitting his body in 1-hour shifts, and I was alone with him in this room, thinking how crazy it is that me as a 20-year-old and this 16-year-old are being sent to kill each other by these adults for these ideologies that we don't quite understand, and it's just a sad situation.
According to Rolling Stone magazine, Bergdahl sent a final email to his parents on June 27, 3 days before he was captured. He wrote, quote, "The future is too good to waste on lies, and life is way too short to care for the damnation of others, as well as to spend it helping fools with their ideas that are wrong. I've seen their ideas, and I'm ashamed to even be American. The horror of the self-righteous arrogance that they thrive in. It is all revolting. Quote, I am sorry for everything here. These people need help, yet what they get is the most conceited country in the world telling them that they are nothing and they're stupid, that they have no idea how to live. The horror that is America is disgusting." In that email, he also referred to seeing an Afghan child run over by a U.S. military vehicle. Your reaction to some of those words?
Well, I want to react to one thing, to one aspect of that statement, and that was about lies. We as veterans were lied to about the Iraq War. We were lied to by the Bush administration, and with the endorsement of Congress, we went into Iraq. Nearly 5,000 American soldiers were killed. Well over 100,000 Iraqi civilians were killed based on that lie. And, there's been a lot of talk over the last few months about a lie that was told at the Phoenix VA hospital about these secret waiting lists. And I find it really ironic that Congress is so obsessed about figuring out who lied at the Phoenix VA hospital and the circumstances of that lie that are connected to the deaths of 40 veterans, when a lie that they told killed nearly 5,000 American soldiers and over 100,000 Iraqi civilians. And what they're doing is they're trying to defer blame from themselves. Congress is the reason that we have waiting lists. Congress is the reason that we deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan and deploy over 2 million veterans and have this influx of veterans that are fighting to get VA health care.
You know, it's interesting you raise this, Brock, because last week at this time, everyone nonstop across all of the media was talking about whether General Shinseki would resign and about the horror of the VA, the waits that people have when they come home from war, 1 to 2 years. And within 2 days, then that is all wiped off of the face of the media. And this is the controversy that takes its place. But you see these as connected.
Well, I'm not sure if they're connected. It could be that this happened at a time when the Obama administration anticipated General Shinseki stepping down. I don't know, but I see a connection in Congress's willingness to exploit other people's service for political gamesmanship. Last week, they scapegoated General Shinseki, a veteran, a wounded veteran who served for nearly 40 years. They scapegoated him to defer blame from themselves and the role that they played in creating these wait lists.
Hey, Brian.
Failing to prepare
How's it going?
for the costs of veterans coming home.
That's good.
When we went to
I feel
Iraq
good.
and we went to Afghanistan, they did not set aside the necessary funds that would be required to care for our veterans to come home and to
Take a
make the
nap.
systematic changes that would need to be
All right,
made.
cool.
So the Congress played a huge role in creating those wait lists and the
Yeah.
problems.
Well, we
that
should
VA
get to
is
the bank
facing, and they scapegoated a veteran
before it
last
closes.
week, and this week they're now taking advantage of a POW and using him
Down on,
and it's pretty
like,
disgusting and it's pretty shameful.
Seneca?
Did you ever get conscientious objector status?
I didn't get conscientious.
Like
objector
Seneca and
status.
Myrtle?
You know, the process for reserve soldiers, it's supposed to take about 6 months, 3 months for active soldiers. But the process...
Yeah, you could.
It's always, there are always
You definitely
obstacles
could.
and barriers in the process.
Yeah, it would probably be
You always
closer
have butt heads
to do
with
that.
officers, they lose your paperwork. You really need to have legal assistance in order to get
Alright,
CO
cool.
status because the process is
Bring,
so difficult.
you need,
So I think that
make sure to
if,
bring a
if
ID.
more veterans were aware, more soldiers
Yeah.
were aware that the CO
Alright,
process
cool.
exists, and if there were reforms made to the CO process,
Right,
we
see.
may not have had a situation where a soldier had a conscientious change of heart and left his post because he didn't realize that there were formal courses of actions that he could have taken. Not saying that that's the reason why Sergeant Bergdahl left. We don't know. But the point is I think that we could avoid potential situations like this if we reform the CO process and if more soldiers are made aware that process exists.
Brock McIntosh, I want to thank you so much for being with us. A soldier who served in Afghanistan in 2008 and 2009, applied for conscientious objector status, and was discharged in May of 2014. He's a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War. When we come back, we'll be joined by the first Socialist City Council member of Seattle, Washington, who pushed for and ultimately got passed a $15 an hour minimum wage.